There was still confetti in Melanie's hair when the HR director whispered, "Can we chat in the north glass room?" Champagne flute still in hand, Melanie followed, heels echoing like punctuation on a sentence she hadn't finished writing yet. The party had been for her division. Client expansion services had just closed the quarter at 112% of target, with applause so loud even the janitor clapped twice. But the glass door clicked shut behind her. Suddenly, the air got real sterile. Nate Callahan was already inside, legs crossed like he'd read a book on how to sit powerfully and memorized every damn pose. He looked like if a Patagonia vest gained sentience and declared itself CEO. The HR lady cleared her throat, but Nate jumped in first, oozing startup vernacular. "Melanie, first off, wow. What you've built, phenomenal. Truly. But we're pivoting toward lean scalability, and candidly, role's been identified as non-scalable." He actually used finger quotes. Melanie blinked, once. She didn't scream, didn't ask questions. Instead, she watched as he signed the termination authorization himself in his little tech bro chicken scratch. No lawyer, no second signature. Just him. Her smile flickered for half a second like a bulb with a secret voltage. "You're handling this with incredible grace," HR murmured, sliding the manila folder across the table like it contained anything more than recycled legalese. Melanie nodded, stood, and tucked her badge into her coat pocket, not in surrender, but as a souvenir. What Nate didn't know, what nobody bothered to check, was that Melanie had spent the last 72 hours quietly auditing every active service-level appendix that didn't have a countersignature. She'd blind carbon copied them to her personal email, along with select screenshots of renewal terms, rebate triggers, and custom discount escalators. Not in malice, just in insurance. Downstairs, the party was still thumping. She walked through it like a ghost with secrets, stopping only to grab a slice of cake with Q2 royalty, piped in green frosting. Someone handed her a paper crown. She wore it out the door. Melanie opened her laptop and changed her LinkedIn header to independent growth strategist. No mention of HorizonCorp. No rage post, just one update. She even cropped Nate out of their group photo. She knew what was coming. Not immediately, but inevitably. Because HorizonCorp wasn't just losing an employee, they were losing the only person who remembered which clients needed what by memory, not metrics. And the man who labeled her non-scalable, he just deleted his own parachute. The Monday after Melanie's forced farewell, the office was a mausoleum of confused optimism. Interns turned transitional analysts huddled over a row of navy blue binders, labeled with the kind of fake precision only corporate bureaucracy could invent. Client Playbook, Vol 1, Onboarding to Optimization. It looked impressive. Tabs, color coding, laminated cheat sheets. The kind of stuff that screamed, "We planned this," even though they absolutely didn't. A guy named Dakota, whose only credential appeared to be owning a MacBook with stickers, flipped open the first binder and muttered, cool, yeah, totally scalable." Problem was, those binders were the corporate equivalent of IKEA manuals printed without the pictures. Missing, the handshake deals, the time zone fudge factors, the "don't call Krista before 10 a.m., her kid has epilepsy" type notes. Melanie never put that stuff in the playbook. She was the playbook. By 6:00 p.m., IT had revoked her login credentials with the same sterile efficiency as a TSA confiscating toothpaste. Her Slack disappeared mid-conversation. The server blocked her IP. Even her digital badge deactivated like she'd tried to storm the Pentagon. Nobody said thank you. Melanie, however, didn't panic. At precisely 5:58, with a VPN humming and a cup of licorice tea steaming beside her, she downloaded one final treasure trove, a zipped file labeled Client Gravity Reports Final Zip. Inside, personalized feedback loops, sentiment trends, renewal likelihood predictions, stuff she generated off books using a hybrid of survey logic and, frankly, vibes. She closed the laptop softly, like tucking in a toddler she didn't plan to raise anymore. Upstairs in her building, the couple next door was screaming again about lasagna. Melanie poured a glass of wine and stared out at the alley, watching a rat casually drag an Arby's bag like it was hauling treasure. She smirked. "We all carry what we think we deserve," she whispered. Nate was mid-TED Talk on a VC podcast, explaining how institutional agility was the future. He'd said it twice already, like it was a magic spell that made numbers reappear. Nobody had noticed the finance team quietly adjusting accrual estimates downward, or that 3 major clients were suddenly requesting itemized billing walkthroughs. No one, not even Dakota with his bullet journal and beard oil, knew that buried inside Melanie's mental archives were over 38 custom renewal models, each designed to tripwire into specific rebate accelerators that only she controlled. Those binders, they held the blueprint, but she held the architecture. And the first storm clouds were already forming. For weeks after Melanie's exit, HorizonCorp's rhythm sounded fine, if you weren't listening too closely. At first, it was just hiccups. A few invoices went out late. A client flagged an overcharge on tiered discounts and got refunded before anyone could figure out why it happened. A renewal came in for 80% instead of the full 100, because someone forgot that auto tech never confirms via DocuSign, only through their operations director's personal Gmail, which was always sent from my iPhone. Dakota said it was just noise. Nate called it expected friction during optimization. His voice had grown even more insufferable, echoing off the walls of whatever we work podcast studio he was using to announce Horizon's bold leap into decentralized client architecture. The host clapped like they were taping a sitcom. Nate smirked like he invented email. Meanwhile, Melanie sat 3 miles away at Cuban Cafe with spotty Wi-Fi and a client roster that was quietly blooming. Not poached, she wasn't sloppy, but attracted. One by one, smaller firms whispered her name like a trade secret. They didn't care that she wasn't in a skyscraper anymore. They cared that she knew how to make their renewal rates jump 14% in 6 months without changing a damn thing, except when their invoices landed. She'd rewritten rebate triggers for a fintech firm in Austin, redesigned loyalty schedules for a dental software startup run by a former client who sent the subject line, "We miss you more than our quarterly growth." Melanie charged half her old salary and got paid in advance. Meanwhile, back at the old headquarters, Horizon's support team had started copying and pasting the phrase, "We'll escalate this to our renewals department," so often it ended up in a Slack emoji. And clients, they noticed. "Where's Melanie?" became a recurring subject line in the inbox of Horizon's help desk. It wasn't angry, it was uncertain, hesitant, as if the product itself hadn't changed, but somehow the gravity had. Deals didn't feel solid anymore. Dates slipped. Names changed. The sense of being known disappeared. One exec at a logistics firm forwarded a poorly formatted Q3 proposal with a single note. "Tell me this wasn't reviewed by Melanie." It hadn't been. Dakota tried to fix it by sending 3 PDFs and a calendar invite. The deal stalled. Melanie, sipping her Café Con Leche, didn't celebrate. She didn't even smile. She just flagged the deal in her inbox, because guess who had consulted for that logistics firm 6 months prior? She knew their rebate preferences, their budget cap, their internal politics. She'd wait until Horizon fumbled it completely and offer to pick up the pieces. Nate, of course, didn't see any of this. He was too busy updating his LinkedIn header to driving post-legacy scalability at HorizonCorp and pitching his playbook to a mid-tier think tank desperate for speakers. His smile was still bright. Behind closed doors, finance had begun asking why 3 clients had paused instead of renewed. Still, nobody said meltdown. Not yet. The spreadsheet didn't scream. It whispered. That's how it started, just a quiet little misalignment on row 264 of the Q3 forecast doc. Nothing bold. Just an expected $212K renewal marked in process when the invoice system showed nothing had even been drafted. A missing tile in a mosaic of margins. But spreadsheets never lie. They just wait to be understood. By week 2 of the new quarter, the finance team had flagged 4 more anomalies. Then 11. Then 17. All small gaps, discount ladders that had kicked in without corresponding approval logs, renewals that seemed auto-triggered, except no one could find the rules that triggered them. The term they started tossing around in hushed Zooms was phantom logic. An audit request was quietly opened. A Slack thread, titled Renewal Matrix Fire Urgent, began circulating screenshots. One particularly brutal comment came from an accountant named Ravi, who owns this logic. "Seriously, this isn't in the playbooks." No one replied for 5 hours. When someone finally did, it was Dakota, who posted a shrugging emoji and said, looking into it. Nate, meanwhile, was still tap dancing on borrowed confidence. His Monday all-hands opened with "Great momentum, team. were sunsetting complexity and onboarding velocity. Half the Zoom room blinked like deer in jargon headlights. His tie was purple. His tan looked recently purchased. He ended the call with a fist pump, but cracks were crawling up his face because finance had found the number. The number: $11,804,332.47. That's what was missing from the rolling projection. Not delayed, not redistributed, not in flux. Missing, just like Melanie. It was death by 1,000 unchecked boxes. Staggered rebates that were never supposed to hit all at once, volume-based discounts that cascaded without throttles, renewals that depended on Melanie's handwritten notes, or late-night verbal nudges to certain clients with fragile egos and rigid schedules. Automation had tried to play jazz. Melanie was the sheet music. She, by contrast, was sipping a cortado in a bookstore cafe that smelled like warm cedar and cinnamon glue, scrolling through a market newsletter. A single headline caught her eye: legacy firms struggle to translate client trust into scalable systems. She didn't laugh. She just bookmarked it. Nate stopped responding to internal emails with GIFs. His Slack statuses turned from hustlin' fire to just in meetings. His phone rang more. Podcasts dried up. His personal assistant quietly deleted Horizon highlights from his Twitter bio. The board hadn't called yet, but legal had. And in the corner of every projection slide, highlighted in mustard yellow, that number just sat there. $11,804,332.47, no footnote. No scapegoat, no fix, and no Melanie. Sun hadn't even burned off the dew on HorizonCorp's rooftop garden when the investor call lit up like a Christmas tree wired by gremlins. The rumor had leaked over the weekend, something about revenue inconsistency and internal visibility challenges. Buzzwords that sounded harmless until the ticker blinked red and the stock took a polite but pointed 8% nosedive before the opening bell. Nate, running on 3 hours of sleep and 2 glasses of denial, dialed in from his kitchen, shirt pressed, voice calm, but pupils dilated like a man who just realized the parachute he packed was actually a yoga mat. "We believe this is a data latency artifact," he said smoothly, like he was describing a browser bug, not a multimillion-dollar black hole. But the investors were done playing Shark Tank. One guy, some Midwestern capital fund brute with a LinkedIn banner that said "We bet on discipline," interrupted, "Where is the documentation supporting that claim?" Silence. Then, "Your Q2 wrap-up referenced $12.4 in predictable pipeline maturity. Where is it? Was this reconciliation modeled in QBR? Why is the CTO listed on PTO during an audit response?" And finally, from a woman on the call known only by her initials, EP of strategy for a pension fund holding 6% of the company, who architected your renewal cascade logic. "And are they still employed here?" Nate froze, not outwardly. He blinked once, smiled thinly, said, "We're compiling a complete cross-functional response document as we speak." They weren't. In the background, someone could be heard whispering, "Get legal." Now. Meanwhile, Melanie sat on a weathered bench in Miami, tossing quassa flakes to a 3-legged pigeon and watching the panic unfold on her phone like it was a telenovela. Her LinkedIn inbox had bloomed overnight. Ex-colleagues she hadn't spoken to in years dropping friendly pings like, "Hey, weird times. Quick Q consulting at all?" Or "Lol, what is happening there? Would love your insight." One even sent a gif of a dumpster fire, followed by "Wanna talk." She left them all on read. She wasn't being cruel. Just patient. Panic had turned operational. Finance locked down renewal projections. Sales was told to pause outbound upsell campaigns. IT was pulled into a 7-hour war room over permissions matrix discrepancies. One junior dev accidentally deleted the sandbox environment. People were crying in bathrooms. The board called for a realignment summit. The VP of client strategy disappeared from Slack. And Nate stood in front of a mirror in the 42nd floor executive restroom, fixing his tie. Behind him, the lights flickered. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number, need your insight, staggered renewals. Rebate thresholds, call me please." He didn't know it yet, but that wasn't the worst message coming. That would arrive later, with a price tag. At exactly 2:14 a.m., Nate Callahan broke the last rule of being a CEO, he begged. Not publicly, not with tears, with a blinking, desperate text bubble to the one person he'd proudly erased from HorizonCorp's org chart. "Nate Callahan, hey, need your insight. Something about staggered renewals, clients panicking. Not sure what's misfiring. Can you help, please? The message sat in Melanie's notifications like a forgotten voicemail from a drunk ex, unexpected, mildly pathetic, and delicious. She didn't open it. Not yet. She watched 2 more messages slide in by 2:19 a.m., the second riddled with, and the third dropping the corporate mask entirely. I'll make it worth your time. I can loop in legal. What do you need? She yawned, rolled over, and went back to sleep. At 9:47 a.m., from a rooftop coworking space overlooking Biscayne Bay, Melanie finally typed her reply. No emojis. No hey Nate. No closure. Just this $750/HR prepaid. Restoration not guaranteed. She hit send, then leaned back in her chair as a seagull dive-bombed a tourist's cinnamon roll. Harmony in its purest form. Less than a minute later, Nate's response blurted through, done. Where should we send payment? Melanie didn't reply. Instead, she sent a 2-line PDF via DocuSign, titled simply, Consulting Engagement M. Ortiz. It included a prepaid retainer wire of $25,000, required within 4 hours. Payment to be made personally by Nate Callahan. Not HorizonCorp. Nate himself. Not for the money, for the receipt. She wanted his fingerprints on the bailout. Not the board's, not the company's. His. Because sometimes the only thing sweeter than a severance check is a signed confession of irrelevance masquerading as a wire transfer. Nate stared at the PDF like it had teeth. He forwarded it to legal. Legal replied, this makes you personally liable for engagement scope. Strongly advise against. At 10:26 a.m., the money hit Melanie's business account. She didn't crack a smile. She just opened HorizonCorp's client portal, logged into a legacy sandbox they forgot to scrub, and began identifying every expired escalation clause, each disjointed renewal string, the 3 rebate tiers that had been triggering ungoverned for 6 weeks. Each issue, she logged into a private doc titled, The Nate Files $11.8M and Counting, because she wasn't just cleaning up, she was keeping score. Nate looked like a boiled lobster in a Patagonia vest. It was day 3 of the unholy bonfire that HorizonCorp had once called Q3. The emergency Zoom room was packed with silent squares bearing names like CFO Jennings and board chair M. Kapoor. The stock was circling the drain, the forecasts were officially hallucinations, and Nate, sweaty, pale, and one lost button away from a breakdown, was clutching a mug that said #rise and grind like it might give him answers. Melanie joined the call late, camera off, then finally on. No virtual background. Just her in a sunlit apartment, wearing a loose linen shirt and the kind of expression you'd wear to a funeral for someone you warned twice. Let's not waste anyone's time, she began, eyes flicking toward the lower right corner of her screen. Sharing now, she clicked present, and there it was. A single-page contract. Simple, surgical, devastating. Position. Executive Vice President, Client Expansion Services term, 5 years, non-terminable without full payout plus 50% equity vest equity. 2% fully diluted basis acknowledgement. Public company statement recognizing original division strategy, authored by M. Ortiz Silence. Then someone on the board coughed. Then, Jesus Christ, then we could modify clause 3 then Nate, we need the numbers back. I don't care how it happens. Nate unmuted. His voice was raw. I think we can work with this. Melanie nodded like a judge accepting a guilty plea. Great. Wire transfer clears, contract activates, and it had. She checked her app before logging on. Nate's $25K personal retainer, already spent in part on a bottle of 1985 Bordeaux she had no intention of opening. Ever. With a few keystrokes, she ran 3 precise database queries. Then she made 1 phone call. It lasted 6 minutes. Her tone was warm, then firm. Warm again? She said a name, then a number, then the phrase, that's not how I trained them, and I'll fix it. By the time she hung up, the client portal had synced. 3 major renewal delays reversed, 2 rebate tiers manually throttled. Revenue forecast revised upward by $12.1 million. Not a single analyst had touched a damn thing. Let me be clear, she said, still screen sharing the doc, now marked signed. Your systems aren't broken. Just never earn trust. I did. The CFO's square lit up. Welcome back, Melanie. Nate didn't speak. The board thanked her. Nate nodded stiffly. She smiled. But deep down, the real question was already burning. Would she stay or twist the knife? Because power doesn't always taste better when you keep it. Sometimes it's sweeter when you give it back. after branding your initials on the scorched earth. The ballroom at the Conrad was dressed like success was a color scheme. Mahogany podium, cobalt uplighting, sleek banners screaming reclaimed momentum. In fonts that cost more than someone's rent. HorizonCorp's annual meeting was standing room only, shareholders stacked shoulder to shoulder with analysts, execs, and a few sweaty interns still unsure if they were invited or just wandered in for the free crab cakes. Nate sat front row, jaw clenched, hands folded, the luster of his startup guru image dulled to a chalky resignation. Behind his smile was the haunted knowledge that this entire spectacle, the cheering, the graphs, the new Q4 guidance, all rode on the back of the woman who was about to torch the stage and walk off with the company's last remaining dignity. And now, the board chair beamed, please welcome the architect of our Q3 recovery, our turnaround hero, Melanie Ortiz. Thunder, standing ovation, cameras flashing like Judgment Day. She walked up in a black silk blazer, her pinned back like she had something to say and didn't care if it bruised. No cue cards, no slides, just truth. Thank you, she said, voice calm enough to cut through marble. A month ago, I was asked to return and clean up a mess created by the illusion that people can be replaced by playbooks. I did. The numbers are back. The trust. We'll see, she paused. The audience leaned forward. I was offered permanence. Power. A blank check with my name in the corner. But I came back to remind this company, and anyone watching, that value is not a headcount. And trust isn't scalable when you fired the memory of how you earned it. Then she smiled. And so, I'm resigning. Effective immediately, gasps. One woman dropped her pen. Somewhere, Nate exhaled so hard it almost sounded like relief until he saw what came next. She held up a folder. Per the agreement, my equity vests today. Based on current valuation, that's $12.3 million. A polite ripple of applause. The kind people give when they realize the magician's trick was real. Melanie turned to the crowd one last time, and to anyone still trying to build loyalty with spreadsheets instead of relationships, remember this. If you can't scale respect, you can't scale revenue. The place exploded. Nate didn't stand. Couldn't. He watched, dead-eyed, as Melanie stepped down from the stage and into a tide of backslaps, handshakes and LinkedIn requests firing off like fireworks. Her heels echoed down the marble hall. She didn't look back, and he knew, deep in the part of him that still believed in TED talks and buzzwords, that she hadn't just won. She'd closed the door so hard it locked behind her. Melanie left the building that night without fanfare. No security escort, no cardboard box, just a bank notification and a silence so satisfying it rang like applause.